Well, welcome to Teacher Tips. And my name is Sam Strickland, and I just want to take a few minutes to share with you some ideas for hopefully what will be a strong start to the new academic year. And the new academic year can often present anxiety, worry, concern that we've forgotten how to teach, or if we're brand new to the profession, that we just don't know how to teach. And I think it's often worth reminding ourselves that whilst we've had a break from the profession for a period of time over the summer holiday, or indeed perhaps we're coming into it cold, not all is lost. For experienced teachers that have taught for even just 1 year, you've got many touchstones to kind of draw on. And for new colleagues joining the profession, there's a myriad and multitude of support to help you before you actually go into a classroom setting. But thinking about the new academic year, it's really worth thinking about just the kind of explosive start that we make to our lessons and the impact that we have on our pupils from the word go, from the off. Now, if we took an idealistic kind of stance, the school, which I call the mothership in my book, The Behaviour Manual, would actually do a lot of the narration of expectations, of values, of norms, and training of those values and norms and expectations for you. But it may well be that you're working in a school where that's not so tightly led, tightly structured, and you need to kind of keep that in mind. The other piece of advice I would always give is to follow the school behaviour policy and to use that policy effectively and consistently. But I do appreciate that not all behaviour policies are always perhaps as tight as they seem on paper, or actually some behaviour policies are quite convoluted compared to what we'd like them to be. But there's two touchstones to consider. Just what does the school itself, the mothership, actually provide in terms of training and narration of expectations, of values and norms, and what is that behaviour policy telling you? But taking those kind of two factors aside, I think there are a small number of things that we can be considering. And actually, while I say they're small, I'm kind of downgrading really what they are, because they're quite extreme as well in many regards and require a lot of thought. But the first area for you to consider are your expectations for your classroom setting. What is it that you want in your classroom? How do you want pupils to enter the room? How do you want pupils to answer questions? How do you want pupils to transition from one activity to the next? What are the social norms, the expectations and the values in your classroom setting, irrespective of what the school is about? Although you should always try and pay homage to what the school wants, of course. Think really carefully as well about your classroom rules. It's quite seductive at times, and I know that some people cite that we should do this, that we should create the rules with the pupils, with the children. I actually challenge that. I think that shows that we don't quite know what we want as the teachers. And I think from the point of view of children, of pupils, do they all consistently know what the rules should be? I think we need to know what they are, we need to own them, and we need to tell them, and we need to narrate them, and we need to train our pupils, our children, in those rules, in those values, in those expectations. So the first area in terms of making that strong start is to really consider the expectations for your classroom setting. Then the second bit is how you communicate this. And every year people debate the kind of front loading of expectations versus kind of what I call the marathon approach to expectations. So what I mean here is, do you front load everything in your first lesson, and your first brand new lesson with your class becomes a giant front loading of all of your expectations? And I understand the merits of doing that, and certainly in a practical subject where you're using equipment and there's a health and safety element, you have to do that. You have to talk about how to use a science lab safely. But what I would urge you to consider and urge you to think about is, if in a secondary phase, pupils are going from one lesson to the next, and every single teacher that they come into contact with in the first few days of the academic year are simply narrating expectations and nothing else. And maybe I'm being a bit extreme here, but there's a danger that pupils can go through 13 or 14 lessons without really having learned anything, with simply just being sat there lectured by teachers about expectations and values. So I would urge you to consider how you can effectively communicate your expectations and your values and your norms through activities, through the content, through engaging pupils with the learning. It may well be that you need to think of a kind of a hybrid balance between the two, of outright explanation versus activity within lessons. But it's certainly an area for you to consider and to give real clear thought to. Then have classroom curation. So thinking here about how you've laid your classroom out. Where are the pupils sat in relation to the board? Where are they sat in relation to you when you are modelling and explaining and scaffolding information and ideas and new knowledge to your pupils? Are pupils able to see you? Have you sat in every single chair within the room to check that pupils can actually see the board, or that they're having to crane their neck kind of left or right? Are pupils sat in such a position that when you're talking and explaining, they're facing one another, and that can allow them just to begin to talk to one another? It's certainly food for thought and something for you to consider. I would also consider in your classroom just the number of displays. There's a lot of research out there that talks about cognitive overload and just the impact on children of having endless displays. But have you considered how many displays you have, the purpose behind those displays? Are they something that actually adds value to the teaching and the learning? So that's another area for you to consider. Then you've got outright strong starts. What's happening in the first few minutes of your lessons? Are pupils just ambly walking into the room one after the other, and it takes 5 minutes before you've got everyone sat, everyone's settled, you take the register? Or do you have a more explosive start where you're straight into QA? It might be that you've used, and I know there's varying views on do now activities, but there is a do now activity. How do your lessons start is the important thing here to consider, because that makes, again, a big impact. And the first time you see a brand new class, it's that classic first impressions count. But that strong start will set the heartbeat, not just of your first lesson and the tone of your first lesson, but also the tone of subsequent lessons if you continue in the same manner and same vein. If pupils know that they're there to learn because your start is explosive and straight into learning, then they know the expectation stands for the word go. The final bit is to show that you care. And I appreciate this is easier said than done. And I know lots of people talk about the power of relationships, and I would never dispute the power of relationships. But do consider how you come across as genuine, as interested, as enthused, as concerned about your pupils. And if you don't give that side of you and your classroom delivery consideration and thought, then you're kind of leaving it to chance that will it come through or will it not, in terms of how you deliver your lessons to your pupils. But you need to show you care. You need to show you're interested. You need to get to know the pupils that you're teaching. If you're a primary phase teacher, you will be seeing those children 5-6 hours a day, every day. You have to know, live and breathe those children inside out, because you have them all year long. As a secondary teacher, you've got the conveyor belt syndrome of every hour or every 90 minutes, or maybe even every 2 hours, depending on the structure and setup of the school, a different class, a different set of 30 pupils are coming your way. But you've got to strike a relationship with those pupils so that they want to learn for you. They want to work for you. And this is about being warm and caring and considered. So I hope that's of some use to you. It gives you a little bit of food for thought for the new academic year. If you'd like to know more about my views and approaches to behaviour and a multitude of strategies that you can employ, my new book, The Behaviour Manual, might be of interest to you. But I hope this presentation and short talk has helped you. Thank you.